Okay, hello everyone. Good evening and welcome. I'm happy you're here at this very important talk. My name is Ernest Willman, and I'm going to talk a little bit about myself so you can know who I am. I am deaf. I come from a deaf family, and I did go to a deaf school in Ohio, the Ohio School for the Deaf. I grew there and then transferred to another school in DC, graduated from there. That was Gallaudet University. So I graduated from Gallaudet, got my master's degree, and now I'm working on my PhD. And I am working, K through 12. Actually, I was, in deaf ed for a long time. But, it was very disappointing not to have that education from K through 12. So going forward, I want to present to you about IEP process, IFSPs, some of the laws, the rights for yourself and your students. And I do want to warn you, I'm not a lawyer. So let me give you that disclaimer now. I don't want you to think, yes, I can talk to you for my free legal advice. No, that is not what we're doing here tonight. So this is, I'm purely a student and a teacher and an advocate. So I will be presenting from that viewpoint. And I do have a lot of information that I want to explain to you, and I'm very excited to share it with you tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, thank you for coming, everyone. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about, advocacy that happens every day, and also talk to you about kind of what your rights are within this process. Okay, so you can see here that we have 3 different learning points for tonight. The first one is you'll be able to learn how to become a little more of a successful advocate for your children during the IEP meetings. The second learning point is how you can talk to the staff about what your child needs and make sure that they're getting what they need within the classroom. The third learning point will be some different strategies, some words that you can use, different ways that you can use the laws that are on your side to advocate for your child and receive the services that your child needs. So those are the 3 different goals of tonight. I want you to learn those and have them kind of in your back pocket to use in the future. So this may be a little bit of a review for you all. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these laws. You've probably seen them before, though. You've probably read them and learned something about them in the past within the programs in the Louisiana Deaf School. So now I want you to be a little more aware of how these do connect to the 3 different things we were talking about. We do have the federal laws, which is IDEA. That's the acronym that we use, Individuals for Disability Education Act. Then there's also the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act. So that's the one that we're going to emphasize. And then there's also the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So that's section 504 is what we'll be focusing on. So I'm not sure if you're aware of those, but if you are, great. If not, you'll be learning something new. But a lot of people don't realize that all 3 of those laws can be interpreted differently. So I'm here to give you a little bit of a warning of kind of what the proper use of these laws are. So all 3 are federal laws that have been around for a long time, and they're all federal mandates that are protected. So it doesn't matter which area you are in. Perhaps you're in Louisiana, or you might be in a different state, but regardless, because they're federal laws, they will protect you. So I know there are also state laws that may be set up for your parishes, and you can also look into that. Louisiana might have its own separate laws, but these are the ones that people are the most familiar with and are most often used in the school system. All right, so the Americans with Disability Act, Title II. This part is talking about providing appropriate communication. So what does that look like? It means matching the need of the student. So if the child in the classroom, for example, needs certain aids or any type of access, it is required that they are provided that by law. The law is very clear here. It spells it out very clearly, and that's Title II. So you are able to use that as proof in the school system. It really doesn't matter what type of school your child attends. It could be a public school, it could be a private school, it could be a religious school. It really doesn't matter what type of school they're going to, they are required to follow the ADA law. And ADA, often people say, ADA, you know, what exactly is required that we follow? The ADA itself has several different titles. They're kind of like different chapters or paragraphs within the ADA. So this section here is Title II, and it does mention during meetings, when families are at the school, at the different districts, it does mention Title II. So this is referring to that specifically, just so you're aware of which part of the law, if you want to use that during meetings. You know, in the past, I remember seeing lots of different people say, ADA, you know, what exactly does the ADA require? What does it say? And I think people were a little bit confused about exactly what that meant. And so they would try to kind of avoid it or say, oh, well, I don't really know where that is in the law, or that could be a different interpretation. But I would encourage you to remember that Title II is the most important part in terms of meetings, and you can mention Title II when advocating for your children and the students. This is regarding them. Deaf and hard of hearing, any child with hearing loss falls under this. It could also include deaf-blind students. All of them are required to have access to communication, successful and effective communication, and they need to be provided the appropriate services. So this was written by the Department of Education and the Department of Justice. DOJ is the acronym for that. So they wrote it together to be able to really emphasize clearly what the schools are required to provide. This is required by law. All right, so this is another law. This is Section 504 that I mentioned earlier. This is under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So this is another law, and Section 504 specifically talks about students having access in school, in their school environment, with no interruptions, no bullying, no harassment, nothing that could be destructive to their learning environment. They should be able to benefit with full participation in the classroom. They should be able to be involved in any type of arts, athletics, clubs, basically any type of international travel programs, any type of program. They should be able to have equal access to that. There should be no barriers for them. It's actually illegal for there to be any type of barriers. And really what this means is you can emphasize this to the school when they're making decisions to move forward with the plan. You can use this to advocate for your children. This shows that just because a student has a disability, it doesn't matter. They need these different accommodations, and they are required to provide them so that the child can be successful and fully immersed in the classroom. They need to be able to have an equal experience as any hearing student would. So I do also want to emphasize this word. So, deny. Deny is one word. It's very obvious that that violates the law. Limit, that's another word. Any type of limitation is unacceptable and not allowed by this law. There needs to be full, complete access and immersion for the student. They need to have all of the benefits of learning, all of the different opportunities that a hearing student would. They need to be able to be fully involved in any type of activity as a hearing student would. Okay, so now
IFSP, Individual Family Service Plan. The IFSP supports all families, not just the child that is deaf or hard of hearing or deaf-blind. It supports the entire family. Any of their needs, anything they need to be successful and ready for school. IFSP typically focuses on specific age of 0 to 2. Three-year-olds, once they're from about 2 to 11 months, before they turn 3, that's when they'll have an IEP after that time, after the age of 3. The services can vary greatly depending on the needs of the family in order to communicate and interact with your child. It depends on their cognitive development, their physical needs, what kind of modifications are needed. The IFSP has 5 different categories, and there's different goals to be met in each category. The first one, your child's physical abilities. If they're deaf or deaf-blind, hard of hearing, the accommodations would be meeting their needs, whatever they need to function well, whatever that need may be. And then the second is cognitive. What are the cognitive needs for that child to be successful in the world? What the family needs, what the child needs, services for both. And then third category is communication. The communication that is preferred, whether it be sign language, tactile language, spoken language, assistive technology, what kind of technology might be needed for that process in the age of 0 to 3 and what that looks like to become functionally equivalent. Fourth is social emotional, and what your child's social emotional needs look like. Do they need to have help with feeling good about themselves? So they need to have help getting to know the world around them, interacting with your child. And what does that look like? What kind of services would you need? And then the last one is adaptive technology. Maybe for other disabilities that the child might have, any other technologies that can be provided. Could be a wheelchair or cane, whatever the child might need. So those are the 5 categories covered under the IFSP. You see that part in blue. It's not, it wasn't accidental that I put it in blue. There was a reason for that, the print that it's in blue. often parents feel like they don't know how to communicate if they don't know any sign language. And they feel like they know very limited sign language, and then social emotion, thinking about the one deaf child amongst all hearing children and how to support them. It can be very difficult. So those two things, I would encourage you to write out clear sentences and goals, meaning you could perhaps, for an example, if you wanted to teach your child sign language and teach yourself sign language at the same time as a parent or a caregiver, and that's something you really want to do, could that be covered by, I'll explain that soon, by insurance perhaps? Communication needs. Communication success leads to social and emotional development. Limited communication means limited social emotional balance, not developing well by the age of 3. So before the age of 3 is when this is important. So you need to think about what you need help for being successful in your family. So those two things would really help your family to be happy, be at peace and healthy, the relationship with your child and your family. So yes, this is what I mentioned earlier, IFSP with communication. I mentioned that before. If you happen to have Medicaid as an insurance, it covers any evaluations and language therapy. So what does that mean exactly? It means that you can ask for an evaluation of your child, of their language abilities, and how it's progressing at this time. It doesn't matter what language the child is using at home, whether it be spoken language, tactile language, or sign language. You can ask for their progress to be evaluated. And at the same time, you can also ask for ASL instruction for both the child and the parents in order to be able to have a relationship with the child. So you can request that of Medicaid. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't realize how much they can take advantage of that's out there. There's federal supports out there for families. So you can just ask for them before the age of 3 under the IFSP. And then when they're older, it would become an IEP or school responsibility after that point. But before the age of 3, that's when you would want to ask for those services. Now the IEP, that's what most of us are aware of. And I want to emphasize that it appears that a lot of IEP coordinators who might not be teachers, and then we have teachers that are focused on the IEP goals regarding academics, regarding learning, learning to read at a 2nd grade level by the end of the school year. And they must have writing full paragraphs with limited errors and so forth. That's how it's written for the academic goals. Maybe you've seen those in the past, or you will be seeing those soon. But first I want to clarify the IEP is not just about academic progress. It's really inclusive of 3 parts: academic progress, behavioral progress, and social progress. So all three of those are in the IEP. So social and behavior are often ignored and not included in the IEP goals. So it's important to have a discussion with your family, with the school, about how to include IEP goals for the child's behavior and social skills. Often social skills might be limited because it might be the only deaf child in an all-hearing family, meaning that the socialization might be lost. So the IEP can talk about how the school can support social skills and awareness, as well as behavior, self-control, emotional monitoring, and how to respond to people who have emotions that are different, and how to behave in school when socializing with other students. All of those things can be covered. So really the IEP is very comprehensive, and it should consider how to write those goals as part of both academic and social and behavior for your child. Now this slide emphasizes that the law is up in the yellow. That's a specific law. It's called the Continuum of Alternative Placements. So this law can be used specifically if you want to take a picture of that. The intent is that the child, if they're placed at a school for the deaf or placed in a specific school that can meet their needs academically, behaviorally, and socially, that you have that right to decide the proper placement for your child. You may have heard or were told by a school district that no, your child is deaf and has to go to the school where they live in. They cannot go out to another school for the deaf or anywhere else, but they have to stay in the location where they live. Well, I'm here to tell you that is not true. You do have the right to decide placement for your child, one that will meet their needs. You have that right as a parent or caregiver because you know your child the best. So this, you can use this law, that 3.4 C.F.R. law, to be able to support proper placement for your child. It doesn't have to be the region that you live in, but the type of the classroom. In fact, it could be half a day in a mainstream school and half a day in a school for the deaf. Or it could be one class at a specific school and the rest at another school. But there is that continuum. It's not just one placement that a child has to go to. And this one is a little bit lengthy. I just want to emphasize one part of it under IDEA. That is the law that explains that deaf and hard of hearing children, their language and communication needs have to be met. It's specific to the child, and they should have full, clear, and direct communication with professionals who work in that setting, with their peers, So that means you have to find the school that's best fit for that child. For example, if the child is using sign language to communicate and signs fluently, so the school that would fit that child would be where they can have direct communication with their peers and professionals, not an interpreter, because the interpreter is a third party that the child would have to go through for all communications. So we're talking about direct communication, direct instruction that meets that child's needs in their language, the way that they communicate. If the child's language preference, whatever their child's language preference is, then you want the teachers, the educators, the paras, the students, all to be able to interact with your child. That's very important. And that is under IDEA 300.32. You have the right to talk to the school district if that placement is not a good fit for your child. Just remember that IDEA section 300.32.
So, it's difficult to know where to look. And I do have some yellow highlighted sentences here. I'm not a great artist, I have to warn you. I've kind of scribbled on the page. But if you look here, this is under the Department of Education. It's on the government website, and this is talking about LRE, which stands for Least Restrictive Environment. Why is it that I want to emphasize this? The least restrictive environment often is interpreted incorrectly. So LRE, really what that actually means is that the school and the student should be able to have the student go in and feel as though there are almost no restrictions, there's no issues, the environment is accessible. It should be very easy for them to access information as their peers do. They should be able to access the teacher. It should be very easy for them to access counselors, easy for them to access the audiologist, easy for them to access resource teachers. Really, any way that they need to access something, they should be able to communicate clearly with people. That is LRE. That's the least restrictive environment, meaning that they don't experience barriers or as few barriers as possible. That's what that's supposed to mean. Unfortunately, a lot of people, teachers, coordinators, principals, etc., tend to interpret this a little bit differently. They think that LRE means that, a mainstream program in the hearing world, that it would look like, from the hearing perspective, how hearing people interact with each other, that is the least restrictive environment. That is not what it means. That is incorrect. I know that there are several people who think, deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind students should mainstream into the hearing world and should be able to interact with them. But often there are a lot of barriers if you try to encounter the world that way. It is very challenging for children who are growing. It's very hard for their growth. Least restrictive environment is, like I said, interpreted incorrectly very often. So when you see these words, misapplied, a lot of mistakes have been made. They're saying, oh, I thought LRE meant this. I thought it meant this. So I want to clarify it for you. If the school district, if the teacher says, well, at our public school, this is what LRE means. We think that'll be a good fit for your deaf child. You can say, no, let me clarify this for you. Let me tell you what least restrictive environment actually means. So I'm hoping that this will help you all understand when explaining that to teams. So again, LRE, least restrictive environment that I was talking about before, or language-rich environment. So the text in blue is what we often use as deaf individuals. Deaf professionals use this. We really use this to encourage children who are deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf-blind to really be able to fully experience and access language. We want them to be able to access it all day long, if possible. So it's a little bit contrary with the previous interpretation of LRE that we were talking about, the least restrictive environment. Like I said, there are a lot of incorrect interpretations of that, and we disagree with a lot of those. So we like to use the phrase language-rich environment. Really, they both basically mean the same thing. So the school system should match whatever your students' language needs are. Whatever their communication needs are, they should be able to have full access. They should be able to communicate with peers, teachers, counselors, a variety of people who are working there in the school system to support their learning for them to be successful. And often I'll say, okay, so if the school district will say, oh yes, our school is LRE, you know, it's least restrictive environment. It is a very good fit for your deaf child. You know, we provide services, we will give your student everything they need to be successful. You could say, okay, is it a language-rich environment? Will the teachers know sign language? Will they be speaking to my student? Will they be able to give my kids the needs will they be met at the school? Do you have any other deaf students? Will they have other peers they can communicate with? I think that will help them to remember, if you have that dialogue with them, how they can best support your child, how your child can have a good life. Okay, so this word advocate. An advocate is another resource. This is a person that you can have provided at the IFSP meeting or the IEP meeting. Either or, you can have an advocate. If you're feeling like you're struggling, you're having a bit of challenges with the school system, maybe they're kind of blowing you off, maybe they are not accepting your rights, or you don't feel comfortable, you can ask an advocate to be there for the meeting. They can help advocate for your student. And it could be a lawyer, not me. I'm not a lawyer. But often I will join, with hearing families that have deaf children for IEP meetings. And I do go to the meetings to advocate for the family so that the children can get what they deserve. So these can be provided for any meeting. They can come to either the IFSP or the IEP meeting. And it doesn't matter if they're hearing, deaf, hard of hearing, it's any person who will be supportive for you and your child. Sometimes, we'll join over Zoom. Sometimes the meetings will be virtual. The families might be in another state. I live in Arizona, just to let you know, it's very hot here right now. But it doesn't matter where they are. If they're not local, they could do the meeting over Zoom. And I'm sure the deaf school in Louisiana would be able to find someone to support you and advocate in meetings. So often when you approach the teacher to advocate for the students with other professionals, there are several hearing parents who feel kind of like they're kind of the person speaking for their child, and they have to kind of bring everything specific to the school for their child. Or you might not know, you might not know what's right or wrong for the child, what's a good or bad decision. You might feel conflicted. Maybe the school, someone there has like a specialty or maybe a degree in deaf ed, and you think they might know something better for your child. This is extremely common. And this happens, I hear this story really, really often. So within the law, IDEA, section 300.552, it emphasizes that when determining what process is best for your child, it must include people who are involved in those different processes. For example, the school needs to be involved, the parents need to be involved, or whoever the person is who has the knowledge related to your child. In addition, they should look at all the evaluations that have been performed. They need to look at what options the school can provide. And remember earlier when I mentioned the continuum of alternative placement, that's a law as well. So they need to be aware of all of the different options available for your student. Public school, private school, religious school, deaf schools, state schools. There are a variety of different options, and you need to be able to discuss all of those options and then also look over the evaluations for your child and see which is going to be the best school option for them. You are also empowered to be a part of that decision. You need to be able to be involved in that decision with the school system and all of the professionals. It's very important that you be involved, basically from birth up until 22 in making those decisions for your child. And so you can use this paragraph of the law to emphasize that there should be no oppression of the parents. They need to listen to what you are saying, and they can't say, oh yes, we know better than you. You tell them these are the laws. According to IDEA section 300.552, it says that we as the parents are involved in the decision, period. So, you don't want to frighten the staff or anything like that, but you want them to know that you do have the power as the parents or caregiver for your child to be involved in that decision making. So here are some different resources that are available. I compiled a few. I know that it's a little bit limited. I didn't get to include all of the resources that I have, but I do believe that these resources here will be helpful for you to look over. If you need to kind of have a refresher of this information, if you're trying to remember a specific word, a number of the law, this is a perfect place to look. So you don't only have to look at this list. The Louisiana School for the Deaf also has an outreach program. They have a department, and there's a webpage there that you can look with several other resources. It's really a great website. So you can look at the Louisiana School for the Deaf website, plus this list of resources I've provided. And before I close, I do also want to remind all of you that all of the laws that I mentioned, talking about how to be successful as an advocate for yourself and for your student, it's not limited. There actually are other ways, other avenues that you can pursue to advocate for your family. I think that you all are able to work together and to look over them, at all of the laws, to interpret them. And that will really give you the freedom to make the decisions for your families and for your children. Personally, I'm very lucky. I do realize that as a deaf person with a deaf family, going to a deaf school, I did have full access. And I understand that's a very small percentage of the population. So I do want you to all focus on advocacy for your students, because as hearing parents with deaf children, I'm very thrilled that you came to this presentation. Thank you so much for being motivated to learn and wanting to advocate for your kids. And I really look forward to connecting with you all and meeting your families and advocating as I can. And please feel free to reach out if you want to talk about anything, you want to talk about your IEP meetings, go ahead and reach out. And here's my contact information right here. So I'm going to open now. If anyone has any burning questions, I'm happy to hear them. I believe there are a few comments in the chat box, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. And if anybody wants to bring their video up to sign their questions, go ahead. This has been very exciting. Thank you so much.
Okay, I see a comment here. It says, wonderful workshop. We're having a fantastic workshop by Sarah, and is going to be focusing on IFSPs. Yes, so please share that resource. And a comment that says, anything for the kids. That's right, Patrick. And another one, sharing resources from Louisiana and federal laws. Great, thank you, Dr. Delgado, for sharing those resources. We have about 10 minutes left. We're opening things up for questions. Anybody have questions? Okay, since I see no questions, I just wanted to add a little bit. Okay, I see from Cami a comment that says that my 16-year-old daughter is a strong advocate for herself. And is there a website or a book that she can read for more confidence? There's one cool game. It's really a game. It's Deaf-Verse, V-E-R-S-E, Deaf-Verse. It's a really cool game. It helps to build self-esteem, self-confidence, and making your own decisions. So I can look for that and send a link that you can share with your daughter. Cami, thank you. I just shared you the link for Deaf-Verse. I think that that is, age appropriate, and it requires a lot of deep thinking. It requires self-confidence to get to where you want to be after that. It encourages being ready for the real world. I play that game myself, and I'm an old man. I'm, a little bit elderly, but I still enjoy it. Thank you. Yes. Now, I thought this is a good opportunity to explain a little bit more about Medicaid. This would be good information. Medicaid has Plan C and Plan B. Plan C focuses on ages 0 to 3. So that's the one where you would talk about how to get Medicaid to cover your child's language development, whatever language your family decides to use. And they can provide that access for Part C Medicaid. Now, Part B would be beyond the age of 3. And they would cover any kind of technical things that child needs, language therapy as well, not just speech therapy, but sign language. So if you have Medicaid, now I understand that not everybody has Medicaid. But if you do happen to have it, those are some opportunities that are available to you, some free services. All right, well, I'm not sure if I went really fast or I think I covered everything. I think I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Delgado for her last comments. I had to just spotlight myself. Okay, thank you so much. That was wonderful information, very helpful. I shared with some of you in the chat that there's some links for our website for Louisiana School for the Deaf and resources where you can read things about the law regarding deaf and hard of hearing children, federal and state laws, like Louisiana Deaf Child Bill of Rights. Those kind of things are in the links. You might find that helpful in your journey, the IEP process and the IFSP. Definitely look into those resources. And also I shared the link to our YouTube playlist with our recordings. This one, I'll put that on there as well. It'll take me about 24 to 48 hours, depending on how cooperative YouTube is that way and make sure that we get the captioning all right. So if anyone has any last minute questions, I see people saying thank you. Great. Now, if you also want some resources specific to Louisiana, if you're from outside of Louisiana, reach out to me. I might be able to get you resources in your area. So contact me. Now, if you're in Louisiana, I'm happy to help you to find someone for advocacy purposes in regards to your local organizations. Hands and Voices offers advocacy for IEPs. Anything that you might need for Louisiana specifically, I'm happy to help you. I'll drop my name in the chat, my email, and also Ernest, if you could put yours in the chat. So if anyone has a child that's in school and you want me to come and support your child at their school, let the school know. They can reach out to me. I'm happy to come out for a consultation and offer whatever supports I can. Any last minute questions for Ernest? Thank you so much. That was really helpful information. I hope all of the participants have learned something good that they can take to their next IEP meeting. And Ernest says, yes, power to the parents. All right, well, I'm happy. I don't see any questions, but if you think of anything, please feel free to email either me or Ernest. Let us know. I did see someone turn their camera on earlier. Did you want to sign a question? No? Okay. If you think of something later that you wanted to ask, go ahead and email one of us Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Sleep well tonight. And Ernest said, thank you, bye. Thanks, interpreters. Thank you all for coming. Bye.